My name is Thomas, and today in this video we're going to be talking about exporting your movie when it comes to Adobe Premiere Pro. In this video I'm going to be talking about the basic procedures so that way you can export your video to a movie file so that way you can watch it. So without further ado, let's get started. So as you can see here, I already have my sequence. This is the previous tutorial, the color tutorial. And so I have my sequence here, and what we're going to do is when you're happy with everything, what you can do is you can go to File, Export, Media, or what you can do, what I do, and use the hotkey, which is Control M. I would imagine that's Command M on a Mac. So you're going to hit Control M or Export Media, and then you'll see this window pop up. There it is. So right here is our export window, and this has all the information that Premiere will need in order to export your video. So we'll start from the top and work our way down. On the left side here, we have our sequence. At the bottom here, we have a timeline, so that way we can see, this is just kind of like a final review. For source range, I typically change it to an entire sequence, but if you want to just export a smaller portion, say from, just random point here to here, what you can do is you place your playhead at the point you want to start, and you press I, and you'll see that the timeline kind of highlights. You'll then go to the part where you want to finish, and you'll press O. And these are your ins and your outs. I and O, in and out. And this is just like telling Premiere that you're focusing on this area right here. So if you were to go back to the export window, hit Control M, it would only render this sequence in and out. And you can see right here, rather than having the entire timeline here, you can see that it just starts it from these points right here, from the points that I mentioned on the timeline. Now you can expand these by dragging these out. It's kind of an imprecise method, but if you wanted to, you can do that. You can also click these buttons to set the in and out points. So if you want to, say, push your playhead back over here, and you want your out to be over here, you can click this set out point, and it'll snap it to there. If you want it, same with your in point, say you want your in point to start over here, click the other button, and you have your in point. Since we want our entire sequence, what we're going to do is hit cancel. To get rid of this, or say you've accidentally set an in and out that you didn't want to, what you can do is you can say Control Shift X, and that'll get rid of all the in and out stuff. Often I do that when I accidentally press X instead of Control Z, and it selects wherever your playhead is, it selects that clip and sets that as an in and out. You zoom in to there. So I hit that all the time. So Control Shift X gets rid of that. So go back up, File, Export, Media. So we've got our entire sequence ready. And so what we have up here is our export settings. If you just want to match the sequence settings to whatever your footage is, so right now I have .mp4 files. You can do that. If you just click Match Sequence Settings, it'll auto do that for you. We're not going to do that, but I'm going to walk you through each step and show you what you should be looking for. So you have your format, you have various different file codecs. For me, most of the time, I'll use H.264, although Mac users, you'll often use QuickTime. I'm just going to go with H.264. There are presets here for various different platforms. You have your Adobe, mobile, Twitter, VR, Vimeo, YouTube. I think there's a Facebook. Yeah, there's a Facebook 720, 1080, and even a 4K. For me, I'm just going to match the source. Comments, you can add them here if you want. Doesn't really matter. For your output name, so what you'll do is you'll click here, it'll open up a file browser. From here, you can select where you want to save your file. So I already have a folder here for this video. I've actually already done this video, so I don't need to save a new one, but for example, this would be where I would save it. You can also rename it. So for me, when I'm doing final exports, I'll either do Final V1 or whatever version I'm on at that point, or assembled, or whatever you want to name it. You know, you can name it right here. If I want to name it YouTube tutorial color, you know, I can do that. You'll then click save, and it'll show you the name, YouTube tutorial color.mp4, which is what I want it to be. Here you can export the video and the audio separately. So if you don't want, if you just want to export the audio, say to put it into something like Adobe Audition or Logic or Reaper or whatever, all you have to do is unclick export video. You'll see that the preview goes away, and you'll just be given your color. But if you want our video, if you don't want it with audio, say put it into After Effects, you can do that. Again, we'll just get our preset. We'll match source high bit rate. So here we can see our summary, and this is something that you do want to come back to when you're done messing with stuff, messing with all these settings. So you have your source, and that's the footage that's coming into your export window, and you want to check your output one. So you want to kind of check that this is like the right file format. Okay, Project Premiere, blah blah blah. You have our YouTube tutorial name. This is our actual file itself. Make sure that's in the right spot. Make sure it's the right resolution. We're doing this in 1920 by 1080, so that's fine. At 24 frames per second. We have our field order, which I'll get into in a different video. Hardware encoding. Again, none of this stuff really matters at the end. AAC, that's going to be our file or sound file format, or just kind of like how the sound is packaged. 300 kilobytes per second, 48 kilohertz stereo. That's all the sound data. So yeah, this is generally pretty good. But say you want to mess with some stuff. So what you'll have to do is you'll have to minimize this settings window. I really wish you could just scroll down to the next bit, but you have to close it. So say you were working with some different stuff and you wanted to mess around with your sizes. Maybe you want to downscale this to 1080 by 720 for 608. Yeah, so we can mess around with the width. If you make it something bigger, say something like 2048. I know that's not a normal film size. And you will scale it up, but you will lose resolution, so beware. So for this, I'm just going to go back to using, not 190. You can see that I lost a lot of resolution because it's trying to crunch down everything. 1920 by 20 by 1080, that's perfectly fine. If you wanted to mess with the frame rate, say you wanted this to play quicker, you would play it at 30 frames per second. If you wanted to play it slower, you might want to play it at a lower frame rate. Here I have it set to 24, so I have no reason to change it. You have your field order, you have your aspect. We don't really need to worry about those. Encoding settings. Generally, hardware encoding is better. That's if you have something like a graphics card, a graphics card. And that's pretty much all you need for that. For audio, if you want to use AAC or MPEG audio format, that's up to you. You have your codec. Generally, AAC is just fine. You have your sample rate. 48,000 hertz is currently the highest. Channels, you have your mono, stereo, and 5:1. So mono is taking the audio and just playing the same audio through both ears. If it's set up for stereo, what that means is that you'll get two different sound experiences, I guess you could say, two different channels of audio playing in different ears. So this is good for creating a space. So say it kind of simulates like what it's like to be in an orchestra, for example. You have your violins on the left and your cellos on the right, and you'll hear violins louder in your left ear, and you'll hear cellos on the right in your right ear if you use something like stereo audio. Now, it has to be recorded in stereo audio for this to work. You can't take a mono audio channel and turn it to stereo. You can, but just copying it won't do anything. you actually have to modify the sound, and it's not the same. And then 5:1 is like surround sound for like home theaters and whatnot, and even regular theaters. So work with that, and generally like our audio quality high. The only reason you'd want it lower is for space on like your hard drives, and you can mess with your bit rates and whatnot. And that's all you really need to worry about for these kinds of settings. We won't really worry about all of these other settings or frame interpolation, but that's all you really need to know about exporting. You have your two channels here, two options right here. You have Q and you have export. Export just means that Premiere Pro will render your video and spit it out wherever you decide to save it. What Q will do is it'll use Adobe Media Encoder, and what that does is Adobe Media Encoder is good for mass rendering. It's good for transcoding footage, large amounts of footage to different file formats. So say you have a bunch of footage in .mp4, but you want to transcode it into something like Apple ProRes, you'd send it all to Media Encoder for it to transcode all of that. But you can also export your footage through Media Encoder, and it'll render it and spit it out in the same place, no problem. It's just two different avenues, and they serve different purposes. For me, I just use export. I'm not going to click it just because I don't need to, but generally for just these like single projects that are going to be exported in the same file format that you imported the footage in, I would just recommend using the regular export. But that'll do it for this tutorial. I hope you enjoyed. Thank you very much for watching. You have a good one.